to everyone here today. And I say very good because indeed I am happy, I am very satisfied, and in fact I believe I'm blessed to be part of a team that is delivering a successful World Cup. And I hope you are all enjoying a fantastic World Cup because I'd really love to see you acknowledge that. Of course, we still have 3 of the biggest matches to go. There's a semi-final tomorrow in which the home country Sri Lanka is participating, and congratulations to them for playing splendidly to get to this stage. And I'm also aware that somehow they carry a tag as a potential cup winner. So good luck to Sri Lanka tomorrow, and of course New Zealand, the first of the 2 semi-finals. And then we progress on to even bigger matches, the other semi-final, and then of course the final. But I'm sure you'll all agree that this tournament so far has been a remarkable success with some truly fascinating matches. And after such success, it is interesting that today we are considering the question, is there room for 50 over cricket in a newfound 2020 world? It's interesting, but maybe somewhat bizarre at the same time. Why would I think bizarre? Well, over the last year or so, this was a pressing question, and many had thought a valid one. It was certainly the cricketing topic in everyone's lips, or on everyone's lips, and certainly one of the most frequently asked questions that I faced from your media. In fact, even some great players, and dare I say some not so great players, were all questioning the future of the 50 over game. At the same time, key administrators around the world were either wanting to or actually tinkering with the format of 50 over cricket. Some were reducing to 40 overs. Others wanted to trial split innings, while some had even more extravagant thoughts. As a game, I believe we were self-inflicting a crisis on 50 over cricket. It somehow reminded me of a British jeweller who stood in front of a forum, not dissimilar to this one tonight, and pronounced that his merchandise was rubbish. Well, guess what? The public believed him and they stopped visiting his shops. And those shops, which were once upon a time a household name in the UK, don't exist anymore. He simply talked himself out of business. Indeed, a tale to reflect on, because a year ago we were in danger of doing the same to our much loved 50 over cricket. The more we talked of a game in crisis, the more we created the crisis, and the more we fueled the talk of doom and despondency. A very vicious circle. And all the time there was no real evidence of a crisis. India was playing South Africa in front of packed stadiums, and the picture seemed so different to that being peddled by the doomsayers. On the other hand, there were some of us who firmly believed in the future of ODIs, and in fact the viability of all 3 forms of the game at international level. So, the ICC did what all good organizations would do. While keeping an open mind and allowing administrators around the world to explore or experiment, and in fact we were encouraging them to do so, we also embarked on market research. It is very obvious that before you start to tinker with your product or your core business, you need to know the facts. And the results were interesting to say the least. Some might even find them hard to believe. What it showed clearly was that the public still had an appetite for the 50 over format and was certainly not deserting or rejecting this form of cricket. We tested 5 key markets to look at trends around the three international forms of the game. That's Test, 50 over, and T20 cricket. Bear with me while I share some of these findings with you. I think you'll find them quite interesting. Firstly, a total of 676 million people in the 5 markets of England, New Zealand, India, South Africa, and Bangladesh expressed not just an interest, but a passion for 50 over cricket. Just think about that for a second. 676 million people. In South Africa, secondly, in South Africa, New Zealand, and Bangladesh, it was often the most popular or the second most popular form of the game. Only in England did it trail third behind Test and International T20. But even in England, over 16 million people said that 50 over cricket is an exciting and viable format. The next point was an ODI league with promotion or league or relegation would be very popular across all those markets and would make people more interested in the matches. The next point that we discovered was there is not overwhelming enthusiasm for reducing the number of overs. In other words, 50 overs is more popular than 45 or 40 overs. Exactly. And there was mixed views, or there is mixed views, for experimentation of a split innings format. In other words, the public do not fully support a split innings format. There are few businesses in the world, and certainly not one that I would want to be a part of, that would be willing to walk away from such a massive number of people supporting a particular form or product. This was vital research conducted by a world-renowned research outfit, which confirmed to us that not only was 50 over cricket miles away from death row, but rather that it had a strong and vibrant future, something which I certainly believed in and still do. So what is it that we needed to do? Clearly everything was not well, and there were some signs of apprehension. In my view, and shared by many in the ICC, what we needed to do was to give the 50 over form of the game some context and content, or better content. Important words, context and content. There was a feeling that maybe we were playing too many 50 over matches, and that few matches outside the ICC Cricket World Cup or the Champions Trophy had any real meaning, or in other words, any real context. In June of 2010, that's just under a year ago, I told Cricinfo that ODI cricket will grow stronger. And I also said to them, what we probably need to be focusing on is the context in which it is being played, the quantity of 50 over matches, and when it is scheduled. At international level, I don't hold the view that the format is as challenged as it is at domestic level. So armed with the views that are held and the research that we discovered, we set about tackling context and content. I believe that if we were to get these two issues right, then we would not only increase the popularity of 50 over cricket, but it would also bolster the unique and enviable position that cricket enjoys amongst global team sports. And that is having 3 forms at international level. We're truly fortunate to have Tests, ODIs, and T20 at international level. And in my view, all 3 of them are certainly viable and can coexist. The ICC's General Manager of Cricket, David Richardson, and a small team of experienced administrators, which included Sri Lanka's Nishanta Ranatunga, was set up in a CEC, the Chief Executives Committee Working Group, and tasked to put forward plans for context and content. And after some 18 months of good work, I'm delighted to say that the ICC board had approved in October 2010 the new principles for a strategic restructure of international cricket. This included creating context for ODI cricket through an international league structure, the principles of and mechanics of which I hope will be confirmed early next week in Mumbai when we meet after the World Cup finals. The launch of an ODI league which will run in 3-year blocks between the ICC World Cups could not have come at a more fitting time. Why? Well, because for one, the World Cup has unmistakably demonstrated the appetite for 50-over cricket. And those who were claiming the demise of the one-day format have disappeared. Perhaps not surprisingly. It reminds me, if you allow me to digress for a moment, of trying to find a person today in South Africa who supported apartheid during those dark and oppressive years when I was growing up in my country. It's true, I cannot find a person who confesses to having supported the apartheid regime. I reckon we'll experience the same with the naysayers on 50-over cricket. I've been traveling through Bangladesh and India, and now this beautiful pearl island of Sri Lanka, and I struggle to find a person who espoused the scrapping of the 50-over game. Don't worry, we do have a recollection of who these people were, and I don't take pride in it, but I'm very pleased to say that that view has all but disappeared. So what's brought about this change in tune over the past year? Well, firstly, I believe it's the players themselves. A significant moment came in Gwalior on 25th February 2010, when Sachin Tendulkar became the first player to score a double hundred in an ODI. It was again against the hapless South Africans. And suddenly some of the foremost commentators, the Peter Roebucks, the Michael Athertons, I've seen Mike Selvey here, and many across India and Sri Lanka, who saw the relevance of such an innings, and in fact, the relevance of such a format of the game. And the hitherto momentum to rid the game of 50-over cricket was starting to run out of steam. I remember vividly, Mike, a piece that you had written in The Guardian. You wrote about that Tendulkar innings, and I quote you, with your permission. It is those lingering memories that sustain the argument for 50-over cricket, while T20, brilliant as it can be, is essentially transient, sweet and tasty, but gone in a flash, like candy floss. In 50 overs, there is time for the essential narrative of cricket to unfold. There is a chance for ebb and flow, the fight back, the devastating bowling spell, the redirection of form, and the time to savor the full someone who comes to a match at the top of their game. Most pertinently, it is a game which to my mind needs no more tinkering or dramatic interventions, such as the latest gimmicky idea already dismissed as nonsense by most of those who actually play to split innings into two segments, or at a ludicrous extreme, play what Dean Jones calls test match ODIs. He said this on the basis that point why two T20 games would not do the job in that case is beyond him. So Mike had a very clear view, and I'm pleased for that. And on 27th January, when the Adelaide Oval was packed for an Australia versus England ODI, Peter Roebuck wrote an article in the Melbourne Age entitled, "Reports of One-Day Demise are greatly exaggerated." He said, "Those insisting that the 50-over game is old hat might be mistaken. Rock and roll and skateboarding have been on their last legs for decades, and newspapers and movies for even longer than that. Whereas 2020 provides the promise of a boisterous night out, the longer version gives spectators a day at the cricket and offers them a chance to watch great players and good teams pushing themselves hard." And I had confidently predicted to the media on the 1st of February this year that this ICC Cricket World Cup would be the perfect showcase for the 50-over format to answer the critics, and I had also proclaimed that ODI cricket is alive and well. I am pleased and naturally relieved to say that so far the statements or predictions I have made have proven to be correct. The evidence to prove that 50-over cricket is far from finished has been plentiful. The television audiences have been the biggest in history, and the India versus England match in Bengaluru on the 27th of Feb is the most watched game in the history of ODIs. And it doesn't take a genius to predict when India faced Pakistan in Mohali on Wednesday, that record may well be smashed. Of the sports television market in India, last week the World Cup claimed 97.8% of the market. And before anyone says, well, there's nothing else on the go at the moment, let's not forget the global appeal of the English Premier League or the Champions League, the UEFA Champions League. They also draw big audiences. The World Cup pulled 97.8% of the viewing market. And the crowds too have been outstanding. Most of us would have been at the Premadasa on Saturday to watch a full house celebrate as Sri Lanka cruised into the semi-final. No one that night was questioning the future of 50-over cricket, nor were they in Mohali tomorrow on Wednesday, and nor were they in Bangladesh, where the stadiums continued to be packed even after the home team went out of the competition. So we clearly have context in the World Cup, and we have content. In fact, great content. The scoring rate of more than 5 and over has been the highest in history. Records have tumbled, and heroes continue to be made at the World Cup. Real context would be when any of India, Pakistan, or Sri Lanka repeat the glory of their predecessor teams. And for New Zealand to make an even greater narration by writing their names boldly into the history of the game. Who would it be? There is something at stake, not only for the teams, but also for their countries. Can you just imagine what the reception would be like here in Colombo and across this entire island if Kumar Sangakkara was to come back home from Mumbai with the ICC Cricket World Cup? It would be one of those moments when breath is taken away. Not just for the players, for everyone in this country.